This is a story about power, betrayal, and the fall of a man who had everything until he lost it all. Ethan Osborne was the epitome of success, a CEO at the helm of Caldwell Technologies, living in a luxurious penthouse, driving the finest cars, and married to the stunning Sarah, a former sheriff admired for her intelligence, bravery, and beauty. On the surface, it seemed like the perfect life, the perfect marriage. But behind closed doors, Ethan's insecurities slowly began to eat away at his happiness. Fearing he might lose Sarah to the admiration she received from others, Ethan's pride and jealousy led him down a dark path. His life, once full of privilege and power, started unraveling when betrayal, emotional manipulation, and greed took over. What started as a picture-perfect life quickly spiraled into a tragic downfall, leaving Ethan with nothing. But amidst the wreckage, is there room for redemption? Let's dive into the tragic story of Ethan Osborne and see how everything he built was destroyed, and whether he can ever truly rebuild. Ethan Osborne's life was the definition of success. As the CEO of Caldwell Technologies, he commanded a tech empire and was at the top of the world, living in a luxurious penthouse overlooking the San Francisco skyline. Expensive cars filled his garage, and his every desire was met with ease. But perhaps his greatest pride was his wife, Sarah. She was the kind of woman every man admired: intelligent, courageous, and beautiful. A respected sheriff in town, Sarah had earned the admiration of everyone she met, known not only for her striking looks, but also for her unwavering commitment to justice and her sharp mind. She was a symbol of strength in a male-dominated profession, and Ethan couldn't have been prouder of her accomplishments. Their marriage, in the beginning, seemed perfect, a true partnership built on mutual admiration and love. Ethan loved showcasing Sarah as his trophy wife, always by his side in the public eye, beaming with pride. To him, she represented everything he wanted in life: beauty, brains, and strength. But there was a deeper dynamic at play. While Ethan adored Sarah's success, he also harbored a growing need for control. Sarah's independence, her career, and the attention she received from others started to eat away at Ethan's confidence. In the early days, he praised her career, but over time, he couldn't ignore the fact that she was a successful woman in her own right, with goals and dreams that sometimes took her away from him. As their relationship progressed, Ethan's insecurity began to cast a shadow over their once idyllic marriage, setting the stage for the dramatic unraveling that would come. Rebecca had always been Sarah's closest confidant, a best friend since their college days, and someone Sarah trusted deeply. She was also still working as a sheriff, embodying the very independence and strength that Ethan once admired in Sarah. Over time, however, that admiration took a darker turn. Ethan began to find himself drawn to Rebecca, not just because of her professional success, but because she represented the qualities he had once cherished in Sarah before his insecurities set in. What began with casual conversations and admiration soon turned into a secret affair. Ethan, now unable to handle his own insecurities and desperate for validation, found in Rebecca the very independence and ambition that he had once rejected in his wife. The affair, though carefully concealed, didn't stay hidden for long. One fateful evening, Sarah came home early to find the undeniable signs of betrayal. Ethan, whose eyes used to light up at the sight of her, had grown distant, his late nights and vague excuses now making sense. When Sarah confronted him, her heart shattered as Ethan coldly admitted the truth. He told her, "I'm seeing Rebecca. You should have seen this coming. She's a real woman, a working woman, someone with ambition. Not like you." His words were a sharp slap to the face, insulting not only her, but everything she had given up for him. The woman who had sacrificed her career and independence to support their marriage was now the target of his cruel disdain. Devastated and emotionally crushed, Sarah stood there, reeling from the betrayal. But despite the crushing weight of his infidelity, she found within herself a quiet strength. She had once walked away from a career she loved to build a life with Ethan, and now she was faced with walking away from the man she had once adored. The realization hit her hard. She deserved more than this hollow relationship. Even though she was pregnant, carrying the child of the man who had abandoned her, Sarah knew she couldn't stay. The emotional toll of Ethan's betrayal was unbearable. But with silent resolve, she packed her bags and walked out of the life they had once shared, leaving behind the man who had broken her heart. Ethan's life, once built on wealth and power, began to crumble swiftly after his affair was exposed. His reputation as a successful CEO at Caldwell Technologies became tainted when accusations of embezzlement surfaced. Despite his denials, the evidence against him was overwhelming, and the board of directors had no choice but to fire him. The company that had once been his pride and joy now rejected him, leaving Ethan with nothing but a shattered reputation. Without the security of his position and the public support he once enjoyed, Ethan found himself facing a scandal that followed him wherever he went. The same luxurious lifestyle that had defined him was slipping through his fingers, leaving him grasping at the fragments of a life he could no longer hold on to. As if his professional downfall wasn't enough, Rebecca, the woman he had left Sarah for, quickly grew disillusioned with him when the money and power faded. Once Ethan's world was filled with lavish dinners and exotic vacations, but now, with no wealth to offer and no status to flaunt, Rebecca's true intentions were laid bare. She had only ever been interested in Ethan for his wealth and position, and when things got tough, she abandoned him without a second thought. As Rebecca packed her bags and walked out of his life, Ethan was left alone, facing the harsh reality that his worth had always been defined by what he could provide, not who he truly was. In the blink of an eye, Ethan's world flipped upside down. The penthouse he once called home was no longer his, and with no savings left and no job prospects, he was soon evicted. His fall from grace was complete. He went from sleeping in a luxurious bed to spending nights in shelters on the cold streets of San Francisco. Once a man of influence, Ethan now found himself begging for scraps, the weight of his decisions crashing down on him. As he wandered the streets, he couldn't ignore the magnitude of his fall. He had lost not just his money, but his integrity, his relationships, and his place in society. The realization hit him hard. He had fallen from the pinnacle of success to the depths of despair. It was a humbling, painful journey, a journey he never imagined he would have to face. Months passed, and Ethan's life continued its downward spiral until one cold afternoon, he wandered into a small cafe, desperate for something to eat. His once pristine appearance had faded, replaced by the worn, weathered look of a man who had lost everything. As he stood in line, his eyes caught a familiar face. Sarah. She was sitting at a table, sipping coffee and going over some documents, but she was no longer the woman he had left behind. Gone was the broken, emotionally drained version of Sarah. In her place was someone stronger, more confident, and undeniably successful. She was dressed in a sleek business suit, exuding a quiet power that Ethan could never have imagined. Sarah had clearly transformed, and Ethan could barely recognize the woman he had once thought he knew so well. His heart sank as he realized how much time he had wasted, how much he had missed while chasing after the empty distractions of his past. The shock only deepened when Sarah, noticing him, walked over. There was no anger in her eyes, no bitterness, just a calm, steady presence. "It's been a long time," she said softly, her voice steady. Ethan could barely speak, the weight of his shame suffocating him. He stammered, You look good." Sarah nodded, her eyes unwavering. "Life doesn't stop just because things get hard," she replied, her words laced with the strength that Ethan had once admired. But it was what came next that would shatter him completely. Sarah dropped a bombshell. "I have a son, Ethan. His name is Noah. He's 7 years old, and he's your son." The words hit Ethan like a punch to the gut. He stood frozen, his mind struggling to comprehend what she had just said. For all the time he had wasted, for all the moments he had missed, his son had grown up without him. His first steps, his first words, all happening without the father who had abandoned them both. Ethan's emotions erupted as tears filled his eyes. The realization of how much he had lost, how much he had failed, crushed him. But Sarah, despite the pain he had caused her, didn't let him wallow in his misery. She looked at him with quiet resolve. "I won't stop you from seeing him, but you need to get your life together first," she said. It was the first glimmer of hope Ethan had seen in months. The possibility of redemption, the chance to rebuild the life he had thrown away. It wouldn't be easy, and he knew the road ahead would be long. But for the first time in a long time, Ethan felt a spark of hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, he could turn his life around and finally be the father and man he was meant to be. Ethan's fall from grace teaches us powerful lessons about the dangers of insecurity, unchecked ego, and the destructive force of betrayal. His story is a stark reminder of how easily we can take the things and people most important to us for granted. It's easy to become blinded by success, but without self-reflection, we risk losing everything. Ethan's journey shows us that no matter how high we rise, we can fall just as quickly. And sometimes, the only way to rise again is by facing the pain we've caused and working toward redemption. As we close this chapter on Ethan's story, it's important to reflect on the bigger question. Can people truly change, or are some mistakes too big to forgive? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let me know what you think in the comments below.